Hello everyone, welcome to the film recaps, and today I'm going to explain an action horror comedy film called Day Shift. Be ready for some spoilers ahead. Somewhere in Los Angeles, a man named Bud, who appears to be an ordinary pool cleaner, works in residential homes. However, once the homeowner leaves, he reveals his hunting gear and breaks into a nearby house. In reality, Bud is a vampire hunter who hunts vampires for their fangs, which can be sold at high prices. During one of his hunts, he first encounters an elderly woman who turns out to be a powerful elder vampire. She attacks with unnatural speed and strength, forcing him into a relentless battle, but eventually defeating her and pulling out her fangs. Meanwhile, a young vampire swiftly enters but is decapitated by a silver wire trap. Then he extracts its fangs and leaves using his unassuming truck. Bud goes home, treats his wounds, and applies a sticky yellow substance all over his body. He then picks up his daughter Paige from school, takes her to Yogurt World, and drops her off at his ex-wife Jocelyn's house. He soon learns that Jocelyn is struggling financially and cannot afford Paige's school tuition and dental care, so she plans to sell her house and move to Florida with Paige. Bud is upset that he can no longer see Paige and promises her to find the amount of money needed for Paige, so they do not have to move. She gives him until Monday next week. Meanwhile, a real estate agent, Audrey, who is also a vampire, is talking to another vampire who does not agree with her ways and is buried alive beneath a newly constructed house. Bud goes to a pawn shop owned by his close acquaintance Troy to sell the vampire fangs, but Troy offers only a low price for them. He suggests to Bud that if he wants more money, he should sell them to the Union, the official organization of vampire hunters, although Bud was expelled from it some time ago. He sells his gun and Air Jordan sneakers to Troy for additional cash. Back in his car, he receives a call from Paige reinforcing his determination to gather the money for her tuition and braces so they don't have to be separated. He then contacts a friend nicknamed Big John, asking for help. Meanwhile, Audrey discovers the bodies of the vampires Bud had killed earlier. She laments their deaths, then sniffs the area to track down the killer, and with the help of her assistant, realizes that someone is responsible, vowing to find them. Bud meets Big John, and together they go into the Union, meeting the head of the organization named Ralph Seeger. Bud expresses his desire to rejoin the Union, and Big John vouches for him, insisting that Bud has changed since his expulsion due to past mistakes. However, Ralph is unsure of Bud, considering he has violated many codes, including endangering a fellow Union member's life during a hunt due to his aggressive hunting style. After tough negotiations, Ralph agrees to reinstate Bud, but places him on a 1-week probation period. During this time, Bud will be restricted to the less lucrative day shift, despite his pleas to be assigned to the night shift, where he could earn more money. Additionally, Ralph assigns a Union representative to accompany Bud on every hunt to ensure he follows the rules. After meeting with Ralph, Bud heads to the Union's accounting section to sell his vampire fangs. He is assisted by Seth, an ordinary clerk who, to Bud's surprise, is the very Union representative Ralph has assigned to oversee him during his probation. Although Seth is hesitant, believing he is unfit for field work, Ralph promises him a promotion if he successfully completes the assignment. The next morning, Seth arrives at Bud's apartment early and watches him prepare for the hunt. Despite Seth's attempts to be friendly, offering breakfast and trying to make conversation, Bud remains distant and unwelcoming. Along the way, Bud questions Seth about his vampire knowledge. Although Seth has never hunted vampires before, he possesses extensive textbook knowledge about them and the Union's regulations. He explains that there are 5 known types of vampires. The ones they are hunting today are juveniles, people who were turned into vampires at a young age. While their fangs are not as valuable as those of other vampire species, Bud decides to keep hunting them anyway to raise money for Paige. Meanwhile, Audrey reaches Troy's pawn shop and finds one of the old lady vampire's fangs. She asks Troy who gave him the fang, but the man refuses to answer. The woman then tells him that vampires were once worshipped as gods by humans. She intends to restore their former glory by using her real estate business to reclaim properties throughout the Los Angeles Valley, creating safe havens for vampires to inhabit. When Troy still refuses to cooperate, Audrey brutally kills him. Meanwhile, Bud and Seth arrive at an abandoned bowling alley, an ideal hiding place for juvenile vampires. Bud orders Seth to stay in the car, despite him being instructed by Seeger to follow him at all times. However, Seeger soon calls Seth, urging him to shadow Bud closely to ensure he doesn't violate any union codes. As Seth enters the bowling alley, he quickly becomes anxious as he has never experienced the horror of vampire hunting before, but Bud skillfully defeats all vampires. Seth, terrorized by the experience, pukes and wets his own pants. Bud calms him down, drives him home, and gives him the same yellow substance he uses, a special mixture designed to mask their scent, making it harder for vampires to track them. After getting back in his truck, Bud realizes Seth has left his notebook behind and reads it. He then texts Jocelyn, informing her that he has managed to raise half the money and asks her to be patient. Coming home, he bumps into a new tenant next door, Heather, apparently a nurse. Bud picks up Seth from his house, and to Seth's annoyance, reads his notebook aloud. Seth has documented all the Union Code violations Bud committed the previous day, but has yet to report them to Ralph. Bud pleads with Seth to give him a few more days, just enough time to raise the money for Paige. After that, he is willing to be expelled from the Union again. He heads to Troy's pawn shop to buy some equipment, only to find Troy's decapitated body. They also discover Bud's name scrawled on the table, likely written by Troy after being tortured by Audrey. Seth immediately wants to report the civilian death to Ralph, but Bud stops him. He then admits that the real reason for his determination to rejoin the Union, despite his tendency to violate the codes, is to raise money for his daughter before he loses her. Seth pities him and agrees to not report Bud's violations to Ralph until Monday. That evening, Bud notices Heather arguing with a man from her apartment window. The next day, Bud and Seth cross paths with the Nazarian brothers, well-known vampire hunters posing as stereo repairmen. They agree to work together to raid a vampire hive and split the earnings. During the battle, Seth panics again, wetting himself once more, and is nearly bitten, while the others expertly eliminate the vampires. After all the vampires are defeated, Seth observes that the hive consists of different species of vampires living together, which is unusual. The Nazarian brothers also mention that vampires have now developed a type of sunscreen that allows them to stay in the sun for a few minutes, enabling them to go outside during the daytime. On the way home, Bud praises Seth for his improvement and tells him that he has the potential to become a hunter. After finishing his hunt, Bud takes Paige to her friend's birthday party. While waiting for the kids, he receives a call from Audrey, who threatens him. Realizing that he and his family are in danger, he quickly picks Paige up and rushes home. Noticing Audrey's men pursuing him, he instructs Paige to put on her headphones and play games on her iPad while he evades the chasers. Bud recognizes one of them as the man he saw arguing with Heather the night before. When Bud arrives at the house, Audrey takes Paige and Jocelyn hostage while Seth having been bitten by vampires. Audrey leaves Bud, taking Jocelyn and Paige with her. She is confident that once Seth wakes up, he will be ready to attack Bud. However, despite his newfound vampire abilities, Seth is no match for Bud, who swiftly decapitates him. Surprisingly, Seth remains alive and attempts to reattach his head by himself. They both leave the house and head to Heather's apartment. As Bud suspects she may be working with Audrey, they learn that Audrey turned Heather into a vampire, forcing her to follow orders against her will. Audrey is after Bud because the old lady he killed earlier was her daughter, and she seeks revenge. At the same time, Seth struggles to adapt to his new life as a vampire and begins to master his abilities with Heather's guidance. Meanwhile, she takes Jocelyn and Paige to a vampire holy ground, where she plans to turn Paige into a vampire and have her bite Jocelyn. Seth and Heather agree to help Bud take down Audrey. Then they head to her underground base. Seth has secretly informed Big John, who unexpectedly arrives to assist them when they become overwhelmed by the sheer number of vampires. During the fight, Big John is bitten, but refuses to give up. He urges Bud to go ahead and face Audrey while he sacrifices himself by detonating a bomb to eliminate the emerging vampires. Seth and Heather confront Audrey's bodyguard while Bud searches for Audrey. After a grueling fight, the bodyguard gains the upper hand, choking Seth and Heather with each of his hands. However, they manage to free themselves by forcefully pulling his limbs in opposite directions until they snap apart. Meanwhile, Audrey moves toward Jocelyn and Paige when Bud arrives and shoots at the vampire. But she takes no damage and rushes toward the man at incredible speed. In an instant, her neck is severed. It turns out Bud has used a silver wire trap. With all the vampires defeated, Bud embraces Jocelyn and Paige before reuniting with Heather and Seth, whom he introduces as friendly vampires. Ralph and his union team arrive at the scene, reprimanding Bud and Seth for failing to report anything. He accuses them of violating multiple regulations, but Seth defends their actions by skillfully exploiting loopholes in the rules. Although he is not promoted from his clerk position, Seth decides he will be a better hunter, working alongside Bud. As Bud and his family drive away, Big John, having survived the explosion due to his newfound vampirism, emerges from a manhole. What do you guys think about this movie? Let me know in the comments below. And if you liked the video, please hit the like and subscribe to the channel for more content.